Monica here with Moms Unshackled. I'm so glad you came on board. And just a little disclaimer, that is a picture of a naked woman above my shoulder. So in case you're wondering like what that weird image is, I'm in my office, and this is a massage therapy practice I've had for about 5 years. And when COVID happened in March, I was prohibited from working, but I'm still on a lease. So I was like, well, I have to pay rent. I still have to pay rent even though the government's not allowing me to work. So I decided to keep this place for things like this. And I come down here, I record my podcast down here, I come down here to meditate. I just use my office for things other than massage. And when I was shut down in March, that's when I said, okay, I'm going to build a course. And then I hustled like crazy, and I put together my course, The Best Interest of the Parent, and I ended up launching that May 13th. And so from like March 16th, when the state shut me down, to May 13th, I was hustle, built this course out for 8 weeks, and then I launched it, and now, lo and behold, the course is now my main job. And so the state has allowed me to work again, but I only massage like maybe once a week, if that, like one person. The only people I see now are the women who work in this office. So there's like a lactation consultant down the hall. It's all like women stuff. There's like a pediatrician upstairs. There's a naturopath. We have like a doula here. We have other practitioners. So those are my only clients now. So it's just a fun story. And I'm actually going to be renewing my lease here because I just love this space so much. So before we get started, I don't really share this with people, but I am a huge oracle card junkie, and I was going to pull a card right before I got here, and I pulled the card, the Earth Keeper. And this is just stuff I do for inspiration, for guidance, to give me a boost. I'm going through some personal things in my life right now, so I've just been spending a lot of time just taking excellent care of myself so that I can get through this transition. And so speaking of which, the decision to sue the state is a really big decision, and it should not be taken lightly. And as someone who has actually sued the state a couple times, I know, the good things, the bad things, what you need to consider before you sue the state. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in this training. So let me just get started with a little bit of a precursor to taking this training. This might not be a good time for you to sue the state. You might be suffering in a lot of pain, a lot of anguish. You might be walking around like a zombie because you can't live with your court orders. You can't live with the injustice and the trauma. You probably have limited access with your kids. Maybe you got taken for a lot of money. Maybe you are living in a state of shock, and your whole life is like a fog, and you're just going through the motions, and you're not functional at work, and you can't even be present with your kids when you're with them. And I'm talking about this because I've been there. When my son was first taken in he was taken in 2010, and I thought it was a temporary order. But then that temporary order became permanent in 2011. And 2011 was really like a crash because I didn't think he was going to be taken permanently. And so I walked around for 9 months just not there. I was not present. I don't remember how I functioned in that time period. And when I was at work, I was being called into the office, and my boss was like, "What's going on with you?" And I thought I was going to lose my job. My 4-year-old, who's now 14, would ask me questions, and I'd be like, "Huh? What? Would you say?" And I was just always like, I was just like a zombie. And I would just lay in bed and just stare at the ceiling all day when I wasn't working. And I was just despondent. And if I were to take on filing a lawsuit during that time, I would have not been able to fulfill the duties that are needed when you want to fill out complete the process. So before you get into that place before you make that first phone call to that attorney, or gather up the documents, or determine what kind of issues should I be suing on, what kind of claim do I have, what kind of issues should I raise, what do I do, which court do I even go to? Do I go to state court, federal court? What do I do? Before you even start asking yourself those questions, I want you to take a lot of negative space and just like, I call it akasha. Akasha is a really, really crucial thing to embrace. It's a stepping stone to healing. It's like just clearing out, everything and just getting really still and just saying, do I have the resources internally to do what I need to do to go forward with this lawsuit? Am I properly grieving the loss of my child? Am I grieving the loss of the relationships that are probably falling apart because now all I do is talk about the court system and my friends and family really don't want to be around me anymore? I'm speaking from experience. Am I able to grieve those losses? Am I able to grieve the loss of my money, my resources, your identity? If you're not a full-time parent anymore, are you grieving those losses properly? Are you, do you have a sense of safety in the world? Do you feel safe? If you don't, are you properly grieving this new sense of the world is not a safe place? I thought it was a safe place, and it's not. The loss of your sense of injustice and your trust in the system. And maybe you don't trust people now. If you can't trust a court system, a government system to, uphold your fundamental rights, can you trust, the guy or girl that asked you out on a date? Can you trust, your child's caregivers, things like that. So, and the reason I go through this with you is because a lot of parents jump into a lawsuit as their primary form of healing from injustice and suffering because they feel like they have to keep their wheels turning. They have to keep doing things to acquire that justice that they are waiting for. And jumping into a lawsuit after you've suffered a big loss is difficult when you don't have the internal resources to sustain you for the 12 to 18 month period that you need. And so I would take, look at your statute of limitations. Typically, like in Connecticut, it's 2 years. I recommend parents wait as long as possible before filing a lawsuit. And I know what you're thinking, well, I can't wait 2 years to file. I need this fixed now. Well, even if you were ready, and even if you had everything you need, if you had a great attorney and you had 20 grand sitting around and you had all the resources necessary to do this lawsuit, it's going to be 2 years or 5 years before you get justice anyway. So why not take 12 months just for yourself so that you can recover from your losses and rebuild a new identity? Because this is the thing, human beings, we are more than capable of healing from this. I know that you don't believe me. I know that this is an extra special level of trauma. And if you want to learn more about, this invisible layer of trauma that I came up with this theory 14 months ago. I did record a podcast episode about it. It's podcast episode 1 of the Family Court Crusader podcast, and I will link that into the comments. I want you to listen to that episode. It's 8 minutes long. And it talks about the 3 layers of trauma. There's, natural disasters, hurricane, tornado, the death of a parent, the death of a pet, even the death of a child. Those things are natural losses. Those are natural traumas of varying degrees of severity. Obviously, having your car stolen isn't going to be as severe as losing a child, but they're still natural traumas. And then there's another layer of trauma where you have natural traumas that are induced by the actions of another person in a criminal manner. So losing your child to leukemia is different than having your child, hurt really badly by another person. Losing your home in a hurricane is different than having a bunch of burglars break into your home and burn it down. So when you enter into the second level of trauma, it's going to take a lot longer to recover from that because it's man on man trauma. And so you'll need a lot more healing around recovering from those losses and, gaining a new sense of trust in the world and learning how to feel safe in this world again. So there's a lot of work to be done there. And then there's a third layer of trauma that nobody talks about. If you go to a therapist, unless they specialize in legal abuse syndrome, that's a Karen Huffer term, by the way, I have to give her credit. If they don't specialize in things like government abuse, like refugee, situations or overseas where they're spraying sarin gas in the streets and, trafficking children. Typically, you won't really see that in the United States. At least it's not out in the open in the United States, where it's more open and out on display in other countries. So if you don't have a therapist that specializes in things like that, like even like war veteran therapy is a really good person to contact if you're looking for therapy to address this legal abuse, because to a degree, combat trauma can be attributed to corrupt government policies on either side, either our side or the other, the enemy side. So anyway, so if you're not, addressing your losses and your suffering, then it's really hard to gather up the resources to acquire or to participate in a lawsuit. So definitely do a lot of personal inventory, and determine if you have the resources to do this. And if you're one of my students, go back and rewatch modules 5 and 6 of the best interest of the parent. And so that's the first thing I want you to look at as a preliminary step before you even pick up that phone to make that lawsuit, to find that attorney. The other thing I want you to do, and this is like an extension of the first step, ask yourself, take a lot of time, inquiring within, am I doing this from a place of growth and altruism, and am I doing this to put my legacy mark in the world, my legacy level activism in the world? Am I doing this because I want the world to be a better place? Do I want to change the system so that other people don't suffer the way I did? Am I willing to fail a lot so that the end game can be a win, even if I'm not the one making that win happen? Can I create this so that even if I don't succeed, somebody behind me will come and pick up where I left off? Because oftentimes these things require 5 or 6 people in front of you to fail so that you can be that 7th person and do it correctly, because you're watching how other people did it and you're not making those same mistakes, and you end up becoming successful with your lawsuit. And so we learn from other people's failures. Like, all the movements that have ever happened because other people before them failed. So Rosa Parks was not the first woman of color to be arrested on a bus for not giving up her seat. The first person to be arrested was actually a pregnant teenager. And the NAACP or whatever movement was in charge of this movement decided that Rosa Parks would be a better person to be the leader of, on the front lines of this movement, because a pregnant teenager didn't have the social, charisma or this, the clout that Rosa Parks did. Rosa Parks was part of the NAACP, and she had a little bit more clout. So anyway, so are you doing this from a place of putting your personal legacy in the world so that other people can learn and we can have better laws? Or are you doing this from a place of, I gotta freaking fix this now because I can't live like this. I can't go on. I can't, is it coming more from I need to get out of this emergency situation? I'm not safe. I'm barely hanging on. I can't live like this. I'm gonna die if I don't get this fixed. Where are you coming from with this lawsuit? So if you are coming from the first position, you're more likely to have the energy you need to keep going, because it's more activist energy. And even when you have your setbacks, because again, when the Attorney General files that motion to dismiss, you're going to be triggered. You're going to be pissed off because you're going to get a 20-page document that says that you should not have a claim. And they're going to diminish you as a person, and your kids, and your story is going to be diminished, and just who cares about that freaking parent? I'm the Attorney General. I'm better. And this Attorney General doesn't know anything about you, doesn't know about your story. They paid their little pipsqueak assistant to type up a form letter to dismiss you because of certain doctrines like Rooker-Feldman, the abstention doctrines, all these things that that the Attorney General will just file as a housekeeping strategy to try to get rid of you and discourage you when they don't give a damn about what you're actually complaining about because they didn't bother to read the freaking complaint. Okay, so like when that happens, you're gonna be triggered. You're gonna be so mad. You're gonna be so offended because the Attorney General is supposed to be looking out for our rights, making sure that we're not getting screwed. And when you get that initial dismissal form, which is a standard, are you gonna be able to handle getting triggered? So when you get these triggers, if you're coming from a place of altruism and like high vibration activist energy, then you're gonna be able to bounce back quicker and be like, oh, there's that thing that came in. That's the thing that I've been expecting. Now I know, now I'm gonna respond to that. Maybe I'll throw a little tantrum, but you have to come from a winning mindset. I know from a personal level in my own personal life that the more I fail at something, the more I eventually succeed. Like for example, I decided, I think like 15 months ago that I was gonna lose all the baby weight that I put on, right? And I failed and failed and failed and failed and failed. I failed for like 8 months. I lost like 3 pounds in 8 months. And every time I failed, every time like I would do this exercise or like, you know, do this eating plan, and it didn't work, and I lose like, you know, 0.2 of a pound or something, I would say, okay, that was another failure. What can I be doing differently? Let me try this instead. Maybe running isn't like gonna make it, maybe it ain't gonna happen if I'm running, you know? Maybe I'll try this instead. And then I failed at that thing too because I didn't have the muscle memory to do HIIT workouts, you know? And that didn't work either. For like 3 weeks, that didn't work. So I was doing all these things and nothing was working, right? I mean, I failed at weight loss. Like 8 months, I lost 3 pounds. I was like, woohoo. And so finally I said, okay, I'm gonna try a new thing. And I did that new thing and I've lost 20 pounds since July from that new thing. So I'm down like 23 pounds. So I'm well over halfway to my goal. And I am now on this trajectory where I'm like, you know, you're gonna get this momentum where if you keep embracing that failure, the more you could take on the failure and be totally chill about it. Like you need to chill out, guys, with your failure intolerance. Our community is so traumatized and suffering so gravely that we can't tolerate any amount of failure. Even like someone's coming. You're at Thanksgiving, your Aunt Joanne says, oh my God, you know you can't sue the state, right? You know you can't do that. So-and-so is in bed with so-and-so. And everybody has a freaking mouth about it, right? And like they're gonna like just, and then you're gonna go on Facebook and share your news. Oh, I'm suing the guardian ad litem. And you know, you're gonna get like 10 people saying, oh, you can't do that. You know, I sued my GAL and I lost and so like, you're gonna get a lot of like naysayers because you're doing something different. You're taking up extra space in the reform community, and that can be a little bit intimidating to some people. And so everybody's gonna have an opinion, but you have to just like allow the failures to just happen, because the more you fail, the more you succeed. You cannot succeed without having a bunch of failures. So anyway, even like getting on the phone with attorneys, you're gonna tell your story. They're gonna say, oh no, we don't do family law. And you're gonna hang up, and then you're gonna have all these experiences where you're gonna wanna have these setbacks. You're gonna feel like you're having a setback, but it's not. The more setbacks you have, the closer you are to getting to where you need to be. And again, even if ultimately you lose your lawsuit, the next person's gonna come along and learn from what you did, and they're gonna win. They're gonna succeed, and that's gonna be a big deal. So, all right, so we covered, you know, your housekeeping, taking care of like your mindset, like, you know, is this a good thing for me to be doing? And again, if this is not the right time for you, revisit this in a year. Come back to this training, you know, December 2021, and say, oh, let me watch that training that Monica did. Maybe now I could do this. And typically the statute of limitations is like 2 years. And so if you're getting screwed by the government left and right, and you just had a court date a month ago, you still have another couple of years before you could do something about it. So I would check your statute of limitations. It's very important. And I think you're better off waiting, taking care of business first, taking care of your inner resources, so that you can, you know, carry on and have the sustenance that you need to do this lawsuit. Because chances are you're gonna have to be driving the bus in this lawsuit. Unless you are fortunate enough to get an attorney that will do all the work for you on a contingency. So A, getting an attorney that will even stand up to the family court system, period. And B, someone who will do it on a contingency is massive. If you are lucky enough to find that, I'm giving this training assuming that you're not finding that. But if you find that you have to do this alone, it's okay to put out $250 or $300 for an hour of an attorney's time. Call up a civil rights attorney. Do not contact a family law attorney and ask them how to sue the state. Do not do that. No. Call up a civil rights attorney and say, hey, I'm stuck on this piece of my lawsuit. Can you just give me some advice for an hour? And see if look, attorneys are more than happy to get on the phone with you for an hour, in my opinion, than putting on a suit, driving in traffic in the snow, because it's Connecticut, paying a parking meter, waiting in line and dealing with court and judges when they could just make a quick $250 talking to you for an hour about what they know. They're just sharing what they know. It's and so they can point you in a lot of really good directions. So let's see here. Yeah, so again, if you're coming from a place of altruism, you're going to have like better, intellectual recruitment to keep going. You're not going to be shot down every 2 seconds because you're not putting your own circumstances as the driving force. Like, like I have a client who's suing the state right now, and her daughter is suffering and languishing in state care, like languishing. And this client is like so desperate to get this lawsuit going because she's scared for her daughter's life. And so I get that. Sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you have to, do that to save your child, especially if no other options are working. So, but, she's constantly getting like knocked down, and she can't gather the resources internally that she needs to keep going. And unfortunately, I can't see her finishing this lawsuit. I just can't see it happening. All right, so you're probably not going to have an attorney for this. If you get an attorney, amazing. You're in incredible shape. And if you're calling attorneys and you want an attorney to take this on, this is not legal advice. This is just what I would do. If you call up an attorney and say, I went to court and they gave the kids to my ex and we had a GAL and the GAL lied, and I had all this evidence showing that my ex was blocking phone calls and he was late getting the kids to school, and she, dumped my child off at daycare for 10 hours a day, and, they were, if you just go through all the shitty things that happened, the attorney needs a bullet point and say, I'm suing because this thing happened. And if you can't explain your case in like 2 sentences, figure out how to narrow down this one issue, because typically you can't sue the state for 800 things. It's typically there's only going to be like 1, maybe 2 really big glaring bullet points that you could sue on, because 90% of the stuff that happens in family court, believe it or not, is actually legal. And the reason it's legal, because I keep saying all these courts are illegal. You listen to my podcast, I'm constant like, these are illegal courts, kangaroo courts. The reason they're legal, and this is so depressing and horrifying and like awful, is because me included, I did this too for years, for 6 years I did this. We unknowingly give consent for the state to do this to us. We literally are like, go for it, judge, do whatever you want to do. The presumption is that we want the state to get involved. And if we're asking the state to do this, to reconstruct our family this way, and we on a best interest of the child determination, and they do it, and we don't like how they did it, then you can't sue. Even though we don't even know that we're giving away our rights. We don't know that we're giving consent, and we don't know that we can take back consent or not give consent in the first place. And so, and also, even if we give consent, because a lot of parents were like, well, I did ask the judge to make a best interest determination, but I didn't give the judge permission to throw out my evidence. I didn't give the judge permission to cut me off in testimony. For me, one of the reasons I lost my son was because I was defending myself against accusations, and the judge cut me off after like 12 seconds and said, you can't speak anymore. I've heard enough. And I'm like, yeah, but this person got to speak for 6 hours and I've been talking for 12 seconds. But the judge decided that he heard enough. And so when I look at the laws, the practice book, the judge gets to run the courtroom as they see fit. If they feel like they've heard enough, then they get to do whatever the F they want. And so a lot of these things are actually legal. So what we need to do as parents is we need to walk into family court as early as possible. do not do what a lot of my clients do and wait until things start to get nasty before they start doing this. Do it early, even if the judge likes you. I was just talking to a parent, oh gosh, like 4 or 5 days ago, and she said, yes, but this judge likes me. This judge totally gets it. This judge sees my ex for who he is. This judge yells at my ex all the time. I'm like, that is the oldest trick in the book. The judges do this, in my opinion, to gain trust from you, so that you think that you don't have to fight very hard. You know, I feel like if the judge senses strength and like, you know, what's that word I'm looking for? Conviction on your side. Like if you go in confident and like ready to like, you know, put your stuff on the record and like have these legal arguments lined up and you're very like firm, like me, when I walk into court, I'm like direct, I make eye contact. I run that place. Like I treat the courtroom like it's my life purpose to be there, you know, like I act like I own the building, and I know that sounds really, you know, arrogant, but when I act that way, the judge starts getting really nice, and I think they do that to disarm me, thinking, well, maybe she'll chill out a little bit with her legal stuff, so that she could, you know, not use her rights, you know, but it doesn't work. So a lot of parents will be like, yeah, but this judge likes me, da-da-da. I'm like, it doesn't matter if they like you, you still have to use your rights anyway. So like a lot of the stuff that we do is actually, like, a lot of the things that these judges are doing is actually legal. But if you don't give consent and you do say, hey, I want to preserve my fundamental rights in this courtroom, I want to continue to be the parent I've always been, I don't consent this court to take away any of my rights, and the judge does it anyway, then in my opinion, you do have a colorable claim. So I want you to look up the terms colorable claim, because you can't sue the state unless you have a colorable claim. Another good word, and again, not legal advice, but another good term is justiciable controversy. So if you have a colorable claim and or a justiciable controversy, then you have standing to sue the state, because you can claim that your civil rights were violated. Now, if you go in saying, I want the judge to make a best interest determination because my ex is late all the time dropping my child off, or, you know, I'm going to go to court for a modification because I'm not working anymore and I could be there for my child instead of my child going to daycare, and the judge doesn't let you see your child, you know, makes the child continue to go to daycare. Yeah, Susie, it's colorable. Then that's not really a colorable claim, even though the judge did something kind of stupid and selfish. It's the judge has the authority and the power to do unreasonable, selfish, unfair crap, because we give consent. We ask them to make their opinion. We ask them for a best interest determination. And if the judge thinks it's in the child's best interest for you to go broke, unemployed, paying $300 a week for daycare instead of actually parenting your child, if the judge thinks it's in the child's best interest for you to go broke so that your child could sit in daycare with a mask on all day, then you can't really do anything about it because you asked them for their opinion. So these judges' opinion is, I want to make sure this child suffers as much as possible. That's their opinion. Otherwise, they wouldn't do what they do. They want our kids to suffer, because the more they can make our kids suffer, then the more parents like us have to keep going to court and, you know, putting more resources in the system, you know, putting our money into the system and feeding that machine. That's their whole purpose, is to make sure families are spending money. It's like a casino. A casino will always make it so that you keep spending money. You know, these slot machines, like, they want it so that you lose that you lose 85 times before you win $100. You know, they have it set up so that you have to lose. And so the family court, the last thing they're going to do is put out orders that are equitable and good for kids, because then the parents will never come back again, and then they just lost a freaking long-term customer. So again, from a business standpoint, what these judges are doing makes perfect sense. The best interest of the child is the most brilliant business model I've ever heard in my life. It's the best marketing slogan I've ever heard in my life. There's nothing more, you know, soft and gooey than the best interest of the child. Like, doesn't that just sound... Remember going to court for the first time, and the minute you heard that the judge would determine best interest of the child, you just felt so safe. You know, I was like, thank God, my son's going to be okay. My ex is a jerk. I'm so glad that the best interest will be utilized. And it's a brilliant marketing scheme, because it allows parents to just give that consent freely. So when you do call these attorneys, go for the low-hanging fruit. Look for the actual civil rights violations. So one of the most brilliant things, and I don't know how any parent hasn't done this yet, I'm like, waiting for that parent. I'm going to be Betty White's age, like waiting for that parent to do this, because I feel like this is so brilliant. And a lot of parents will be like, well, that's not as sexy. That's not very sexy. Like, who cares about that? This matters. But I think parents should sue the state for violations of religious freedom. When the judge assigns, final say on religion to one parent, that judge just put a permanent gag order on you on what you're allowed to teach your own child in your own home. Look, even if you're not religious, you should still sue for that shit. What if you acquire a new religion in a year and you can't even talk about that religion with your child because these court orders allow the other parent to do that. So if you have orders where the other parent has final say with religion, and you go back to court and you file something called a motion for reconsideration or re-argument, and if the court says no, screw you, go home, which they do, then you could sue. You could sue based on your loss of civil rights. And a lot of parents don't, because they figure, well, I'm just going to teach my kid my religion anyway. Who cares? Yeah, you probably would, but why not sue? Because the thing is, I feel like we're going to take this system down just by putting pinpricks in the system and just putting holes in the system over time. I believe that's low-hanging fruit, and I think that is a wonderful thing to take on. Another thing that I tried to sue the state for was the state snuffed out my rights under IDEA. Now, if you don't have a child with a disability, you won't know what I'm talking about, but the IDEA law is a federally protected law, and for a state judge to snuff out a parent's rights under federal law is a violation of the supremacy clause, where the federal laws cannot be subordinate to state law. And so I attempted to sue the state on that, loss of my federal rights by a state judge. And unfortunately, there is a clause in IDEA that says that family court judges could freaking choose if a parent keeps these rights or not. And that is unbelievable. You could tell that they had not thought that through when they drafted up that federal law in the White House. So I think a parent should sue for that, because if you change your marital status, you should not be prohibited from advocating for your child's disability on a federal level. And so at this point in time, I'm no longer the parent of my child when it comes to his disability and his rights under his education. I think a parent should sue for that. See, I think these things are really big, specific bullet points. You can always sue for fraud upon the court. If somebody lied on the stand and there's proof that they lied, and just narrow it down just to that. This custody evaluator stated that she came to my home and I slammed the door in her face, and then the judge took my kid away because I slammed the door in her face. And you didn't slam the door in her face and she lied, and somehow you could prove that she lied. I think you should sue just for that, just that piece. And this is not legal advice. I'm just saying, when you call up these attorneys, if you just make it a very specific issue, they're more likely to take your case, because an attorney can certainly look at one issue instead of looking at 100 issues and trying to untangle your case. And so again, if you haven't learned how to manage your trauma, then typically parents will ruminate when they get on the phone with an attorney, and they'll just talk on and on and on. And I've done this. For 3 years, I did only private coaching, and I used to give free consults. I would have like an ad, have you been hurt in the family court, blah, blah, blah. You want a health coach, you want someone to help you put your health back together, call me. And I would get on the phone with these parents, and they would ruminate for the entire consult. And I would be like, okay, well, how are you sleeping at night? And they would just get into like stuff that had nothing to do with their sleeping. And that's called ruminating, and that's a sign of trauma. It's a sign of unmet, needs up, in their emotions. And so therefore, because of that, I was not qualified to work with them, because I'm not trauma informed. So then I would refer them out. And so eventually, like, I was referring people out so much to other people that I was helping other people get rich and giving them business. And I didn't have a functional business, because I couldn't help them. And that's why I started creating courses instead. So let's see here. So we talked about the low-hanging fruit. Disability, oh my God, guys, one of these days, one of you parents are going to blow up City Hall with a disability lawsuit in the family court. And we already are getting that. we need to get a lot of traction with disability rights. I'm not going to get into that, but it's like, if you can absolutely sue for violations of your rights under the American with Disabilities Act. For example, I testified on the stand that I had, and I shouldn't have done this, I wish I didn't do this, but I did. I testified on the stand in 2017 that I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of being forced into co-parenting therapy with my former partner. My ex and I did 29 sessions together through the majority of 2012 and 2013 and part of 2014. And I would sit in these rooms for 90 minutes and I would cry the entire way home in the car. And then I had to hire a second person to help me deal with post-traumatic stress disorder. So not only was I in co-parenting therapy with my ex for a year and a half, for 90 minutes at a time, but I had to hire another therapist to help recover myself from the suffering I experienced in the other therapy sessions. So I testified in 2017 that I had post-traumatic stress disorder because of the therapy sessions, and the court's orders were that I go back to therapy with my ex. So technically right now, I'm technically in violation of court orders because I refuse to go to therapy with my ex. Now the unfortunate thing, but still fortunate, the fortunate thing is my ex is also in violation because my ex refuses, thank you, Dave. My ex refuses to go to therapy with me. So we're both in violation of these court orders. But if my ex was in therapy and he was filing motions against me for contempt for not going to therapy and I was being held in contempt, then I could sue the state. So unfortunately, these people are not setting me up to sue the state, which is really sad. But if you are being forced into a situation that violates your rights under the American with Disabilities Act, you can absolutely sue the state for that. Like, holy crap. I want to see one of you parents blow up City Hall with a lawsuit. That's what I mean by low-hanging fruit. Find something that that is actually a colorable claim or a justiciable controversy. So there's another topic I want to get into. You're going to be in a situation where you're going to feel drained a lot. You're going to feel like you can't go on, like this is not working. You're going to question your choice to do this. You're going to be like, I really shouldn't have gotten into this. This is what I want you to do as a form of maintenance to maintain your state of mind while you're suing. Again, this is like a 12 to 18 month commitment, sometimes longer, sometimes it could take 5 years. You are going to find that you're going to be drained a lot. You're going to just lose momentum. You're going to lose energy. You're going to lose the drive to keep going. You're going to start to question yourself, like, why did I get into this? This was stupid. And I want you to plan ahead for those mental setbacks. I want you to write yourself letters when you're feeling good, when you're feeling energized. Write yourself letters. Do this. Guys, if you don't have one of these, go get one. This is a journal. I write everything in here. All right, everything goes in my journal. And when you're feeling good and you're feeling energized, use your journal and write yourself notes like, yes, you're doing the right thing, blah, blah, blah. And when you feel discouraged, when you feel like you're losing momentum and you're getting bored, because this is boring too. This is really boring freaking work. And it's not sexy and it's not interesting and it's not, you're going to feel like you're not getting any momentum, but in reality, you're growing as a person. But when people are growing, they're never thinking, oh my God, I'm growing. This is amazing. Like for me, when I'm doing all my freaking workouts and stuff, and I'm like, doing my healthy whatever, I'm not like, oh my God, this is helping me. It's not until 2 weeks later where I look back and say, oh my God, I lost 2 pounds. So you're not going to notice results in the moment. You're going to notice results later on when you look back. And you realize that you have acquired new skills. You've learned how to be a better writer, a better researcher, a better negotiator, a better, just more secure in your position in this world, more sure of yourself and like the impact that you're having in humanity. So when you're feeling good, journal on that. And that way, when you're feeling bad, you can look back and get that activation energy back. So, big piece of advice here. I want you to, when you're doing this, when you're in the thick of it, when you get past the lawsuit, like when you start to, when you get past the dismissal piece, when the attorney general says, nope, this person doesn't have a claim, and you have to now illustrate why you do have a claim, why this state entity did violate your rights. You are going to be doing a lot of writing. You're going to be doing a lot of researching and just acquiring information. What I want you to do is set aside time every week to work on this, or every 2 weeks. It could be every other Thursday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. for a year, for 18 months. I promise you, it's so worth it. Don't wait until you have a deadline to start hammering out this crappy brief or this crappy, like, dissertation or, not dissertation, whatever. Don't wait until you have a deadline to start researching. And don't do shitty research, meaning don't go on Facebook and be like, what do I do now, guys? Maybe find 1 or 2 people who've been through it. And also another tremendous strategy is to look at other cases that didn't win, where these parents lost, or, and find out why they lost, and then figure out what to do to overcome that. Like, what can I do differently so that I don't have the same outcome that they did? So block out a couple hours. It could be like 3 hours every 2 weeks, or an hour and a half every week, and commit to that. Don't let anybody interfere with that time. Don't pick up overtime shifts. Don't pick up, don't start watching a new Netflix series. Don't do anything during that time. That is your sacred time where you're building up your engine to do this. And when you do this, make it a ritual. Take a nice bath or something. Make your favorite meal. Treat yourself really, really nicely during this process. Put on your favorite music. I don't want you to be scrolling on Facebook and be like, oh, it's 6 p.m. Let me just do this boring thing, and then you open up a new tab. Create a ritual around this. Be like, okay, it's 6 p.m. tonight. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to work for an hour and a half. So around 5 or 5:30, start preparing for your research or whatever you're doing. You're typing, you're writing. Cook your favorite meal. Don't unplug your phone. Get rid of your phone for the night. Play your favorite music. Do an activity that you love. Do some yoga. Go for a walk. Walk your dog. And create a lot of sacred space around this time in your week to do this, because you are doing really important work. You're doing way more than most people have ever done, and it's a really tremendous thing that you're taking on. And so you need to honor that and give it the honor that it deserves. So, and you're gonna get better results when you do that. You're gonna feel better about researching. Like, oh, is this a tort claim? Is this? And you're just gonna gather the skills that you need to do this. Because one thing that you have that attorneys don't is that you have the passion and you have the grit, and you care about this cause. You're not doing this because it's your job. You're doing this because you care about something. So you're gonna have more activation energy to get through the whole process if you do it this way. And don't think that you can't do this. Do not think that you can't do this. You can do this, and you can't fail. You can't lose, you can't fail, because you're ultimately putting a brick in the wall, to change the system. And you're contributing to this cause, and you're doing it in a very high powered way. So, let's see, did I cover everything? Yeah, so I got to everything. Now, unfortunately, because I got cut off, I don't have the questions that I had before, but I think somebody asked about like education, educational rights. So I'm going to assume that you want to sue. I don't know if that parent is on this piece of the live. Can you repeat that question? If you don't end up coming into this training on this part of it, then I'm going to answer you in the comments. I want to make sure I got everything. So, darn it, I wish I could access the questions. Can someone tell me what the questions were? Let me see if I could use my PC, even though I don't have internet down here. Hang on. Let's see here. I don't know. I had a few questions. I don't think I'm going to be able to get to them because I cannot get internet on this desktop here. Okay. Oops. Let's see here. I have a little bit of internet. Hang on. Let's see here. Oh, cool. So, that parent that asked about education ended up asking another question. So let's get to that question. All right. All right, so we have a question. What do you do about a judge who tried to take away educational rights and medical decision making? So I don't know how much of the earlier part of this training that you saw, but if a parent asks the judge to make a best interest of the child determination and a judge decides it's best for the kids to not have a second advocate, then the judge is in their right to take away that right, educational rights and medical decision making. So if you told the judge that you don't consent to them taking away your rights, if you just went into court and said, look, I just want to keep being a parent, I don't want my parenting time or my parenting rights to be interfered with simply because I'm ending a romantic relationship, because that's the freaking ridiculousness of family court. Somehow the state has decided that just because a mom and dad are romantically not interested in each other anymore, then somehow that has to do with the kids. That somehow the rights of the kids have to be sliced up like pie. And parental rights aren't a zero-sum game where there's like a finite amount of rights and there's only so many rights to go around, and so we have to divide up rights like they're property, and they're not, because fundamental rights aren't, they're not a tangible asset that you could split up when you divorce. So, but the presumption that the presumption is that by going to court, you want the state to slice up your rights like pie. So if a judge took that away and the parent didn't ask that the state instead preserve their rights, because what parents should be doing is saying, look, I'm here to preserve my rights, not have you decide who gets what. I want to preserve that. With property, if there's $20,000 in equity in the mortgage or the house, it makes sense to divide up the asset. Like, oh, you get 15,000, you get 5,000. But rights to determine your child's medical care is not something that should be split up. So, what do you do about a judge who, So if DCF is moving to give rights to only one parent, then the other parent who's being threatened by losing those rights needs to walk in and say, no. Until the state proves me unfit, I'm demanding that this court, this judicial branch of government, because that's, if you're in court, then you're inside the judicial branch, and you are, it's their job to uphold, recognize, and protect your rights. Period. That's their job, not decide if you get to keep them or not. They can decide that if you're proven unfit. Okay, if you're proven unfit, then the judge gets to say, oh, wait a minute, you're proven unfit. We have to diminish some of your rights because you're no longer capable of taking care of your child properly. But if you're just in a simple disagreement with your former partner, you want to continue. See, the time to keep a parent's rights intact is when they're at odds with the other caretaker. That's when it's even more important to keep those rights intact, because there's no longer that like cohesive bond that the mom and dad have. So now it's even more important to preserve those rights because they're polarized now, the parents, So if a child needs more protection by the judicial branch of government, it's when the parents are splitting up. It's not either or, This poor parent, he keeps getting kicked out of I don't know. Yes, the answer is yes. I'm in Facebook. So anyway, so if you have not gone to court yet for this issue, and DCF is like, hey, I want this parent to lose their rights, you need to walk in and say, look, you guys haven't proved me unfit. I want to keep the rights that I have. I'm certainly not consenting to giving them away. And if the state takes them away anyway without proving you unfit, then I would freaking go after them and sue them. And the beautiful thing is, and I should have said this earlier, you are more likely to succeed at a lawsuit if you can prove damages. This is so important. It's hard to, it's possible, but it's hard to win a lawsuit if you can't prove damages. So a lot of parents will say, well, wait a minute, does that mean I have to sit around and suffer for years and years and years and get like cancer and get really sick and show that it's impacting me? do I have to go get homeless? Do I have to like, you know, do I have to suffer gravely? No, but if it's been 6 or 7 years and you're sitting in this nastiness and you're sitting in this injustice and it's causing damage, then you can have a better lawsuit. So for example, in my family, I have a 19-year-old stepson who has been alienated from my family for 6 years by DCF, by everybody. Every government entity you can imagine participated in this. And my stepson is disabled. He has autism, and he has a 76 IQ. And we have a colorable claim because we can prove damages. We can prove that he has diminished academically and he's fallen behind socially, everything. He has been incrementally languishing because of this long-term separation from his dad's side of the family. So let's see what we have here. Another parent asked, what do you do about a GAL who keeps referencing an old psychological exam and past history rather than Michael, can you tell me what a PRFT? What's a PRFT? Hang on. And residential centers, an ABA saying your child should go back with a parent, but GAL keeps saying my child needs okay, so this is great. Michael, okay, I hope you're still here. This is, guys, seriously, the ADA is your freaking, it's like a grand slam with this whole thing. The ADA, in my opinion, is going to be a law that railroads this whole family court system, because the ADA is very broad with how much protection it provides to people, and that's a good thing. If your child has a disability, and I say this, if you guys don't have my ADA training, it's only $27. Sign up for it. I know a couple people on this training have a copy of that workshop. It's $27. Michael, I think you should get your hands on that workshop if you don't already. But if your child is disabled, because I see ABA, so I'm assuming that means that your child's receiving ABA, services. If the GAL is making statements about your child's disability, make sure that GAL is ADA compliant, and I guarantee you they're not. These people are not ADA compliant. I had I call this the Richard Nixon story, because I had a GAL quit, not my GAL. I had a client, my very last ADA client that I took last year, his GAL quit in the middle of a hearing. He just pulled a Richard Nixon. He left the hearing and he never came back. We were just like sitting around waiting. I'm like, did that guy just quit? And he freaking quit. He quit because I made my client ask the GAL for ADA, ask what ADA accommodations were set up for his disabled daughter, and the GAL like didn't know what to say, and he quit because they're subject to federal law and they could be sued. You could sue these people. You could sue these people for violating the American with Disabilities Act if you have a disabled child, and this GAL is assuming, basically assuming guardianship over your children during your court proceedings. So Robert said, there is written legal language that preserves the right of a parent to be part of the kid's education, but you must maintain equal legal rights. So Robert, I think you're talking about IDEA. I could be wrong, but I don't know when you came on to this training, but I did say earlier that I tried to sue the state for taking away my rights under IDEA, and there is a loophole in IDEA law that allows a family court judge to freaking take away a parent's federal rights under IDEA, and I think a parent should sue for that. So sorry, not sure what PRFT. It's so funny how we don't even know what we're signing our kids up for. It's like, oh, my child's in this, I'm thinking PRFT is a court service or like some sort of thing that the judge assigned to your child. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Michael, if you want my workshop, let me know. I'll send you a link to it. So guys, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sorry that we got cut off. I'm sorry that Facebook kicked me off. So if I don't see any more questions, we're going to be ending here. And this training is going to be uploaded to YouTube. So we will get that going, and you could share it with whoever you want. And I appreciate you all coming on. We had a great turnout tonight, and I hope that somebody takes on this big undertaking of suing the state, because we are going to get a lot of results in time. Okay? All right, guys, have a great night. Bye-bye.